So I watched an interview with Ben Davidson and I found some of his observations interesting. So let's add some context and hopefully gain better understanding. So we're going to go through some of his statements. So statement number one, Ben says Hrgovic is in the best form of his career, making him a genuine test for Moses Itauma. So I would argue that there's been three good opponents for Moses Itauma, or there's three of his best opponents would be the following, I would say: Dillian Whyte, Franklin, and now Hrgovic. Now, when we look at Dillian Whyte, it's important to look at the context. Dillian Whyte has credibility. He's had some really great fights, particularly against Joseph Parker and Anthony Joshua. But you could make a strong argument that he was past his prime. There was also allegations that there may have been an injury, but to my knowledge, that hasn't been confirmed. Franklin, again, had some credibility, and they were based on the two performances, the one performance against Dillian Whyte and then the second performance against AJ. So these two were credible opponents. And if you look at the Dillian Whyte, he destroyed him in one round. And then Franklin, who's known as being durable, went 5 rounds and then was dispatched. It was a great performance. Now, Hrgovic is still dangerous, still in his prime, but there is some important context as to how dangerous Hrgovic will be, in my opinion. And that context is based on the following. Is Abel Sanchez still in the corner? Against Dave Allen, Filip Hrgovic had a really good performance, but Abel Sanchez was not there. I think Abel Sanchez is essential, not only for strategy, but for having a good camp. So to me, if Abel Sanchez is not there, I think it's a red flag. I think if Abel Sanchez is there, then I think that's a good indication that he's gonna have the best boxing camp, because trainers are not only responsible for the conditioning, or they're not only responsible for the strategy of fighters, they're also responsible for creating an optimum boxing environment. And also, he needs to address his defense as well, because I think for Hrgovic, the defense is a major issue, or it could be a major issue. Now, the next statement from Ben is that Moses chose Hrgovic the fight himself. So he chose Hrgovic, and that shows that he's eager for challenges. So my question here is, what does Moses Itauma see? Does he see an easy fight, or does he see a real challenge? And the answer to that would kind of determine his temperament. Now, Hrgovic with Abel Sanchez presents a real challenge. And as I've stated, Hrgovic has real credibility. He has a good boxing record, only one loss. I would say he has a great jab. He's very accurate with his jab. He's very accurate with his backhand, extremely accurate with his backhand, which says that he has accuracy, he has speed. Maybe not the speed of Moses Itauma, but he is fast for a heavyweight. And the one advantage he does have is experience. He has experienced more issues in the ring. And I wonder if that will benefit him on the night. He also has an underrated left hook to the body. And I feel that Abel Sanchez is bringing something different to the game. He's shortening up his punches more. He's throwing more punches to the body. And he's throwing more punches. He has a very high work rate. And it'll be interesting to see how Moses Itauma is able to deal with that. So then the next statement is that Ben states that the Frank Sanchez issue was bad communication or a setback. To give context, it was alleged that Moses would be fighting Frank Sanchez, but it never happened. In my opinion, this would be a very dangerous fight. I thought that Sanchez would be a very tough challenge. But according to Ben, it was bad communication as to why it didn't happen. Some would argue that it would be good matchmaking as to why it didn't happen. It's unfortunate because I think the boxing world totally disregarded Frank Sanchez when he had that performance against Caballero. But I think there was context to that performance. Number one, Caballero is great at adapting. That's number one. But number two, it was alleged that he had some type of injury before the fight. And he did have some type of knee. He had something over his knee, I remember, over the fight. And so there was an injury, plus he was fighting a boxer who is great at making adaptations and who is really, really motivated. So I think Frank Sanchez has great potential. And that would have been a great fight. And it may happen in the future. And then the next statement is that Moses isn't worried about missing Usyk. He believes his own career will define itself. Now, Moses Itauma versus Usyk, that's a huge fight. That's a huge fight. It's a stadium fight. But it's a huge risky fight, and I'll explain why. If he wins, arguably he becomes a legend overnight. But a loss would have required a significant rebuild. And if he did lose, the nature of the loss would have been important. If you lose a close decision, then I think it's easier to come back from that. But if you lose a brutal fight, like you get stopped and you get stopped hard and you take too many punches, there would have to be a massive rebuild. And that would hurt his confidence, and it could hurt his identity. You know, that can destroy a fighter's career. So that would have been a huge risk. And it's like huge risk, huge reward. Now, Ben says he would have picked, or he would have backed, a Usyk fight, showing his belief in Moses' elite potential. Now, of course, he has to back his fighter. And when you look at Moses Itauma, the first question is, what challenge does he bring to Usyk? So this is just my opinion. Many people will probably disagree. But I think his feet is one of the biggest challenges. His southpaw stance, because that means there's no, how can I put this? Usyk is a southpaw, and that's one of his advantages. But because Moses is a southpaw, then that means there's neither advantage for both men. But I think the southpaw stance, the feet, he has such quick feet for a heavyweight, maybe quicker feet than Usyk, and the precision of the punches and the ability to go through the phases would have been a challenge. However, the biggest thing that Moses Itauma doesn't have is experience in relation to the Usyk experience. So think of this. How would Moses Itauma have been able to cope with Usyk in the second half of the fight? How would he have been able to operate with Usyk without that experience? And the whole premise here is that experience is extremely important. And then the next statement, and then we shift to Wardley. And Ben admits that the Wardley fight may have been stopped too soon. To many, there's no may about it, but it's important to realize that in hindsight, we can always make better decisions. I think, the fight was stopped too late. And it's good that, Ben is now acknowledging that the fight was stopped too late. But when you look at the actual time of the fight, or experience in watching the fight in real time, Wardley had shown a real history of recovery and being able to not only come back, but come back and land that knockout punch. So that's why you can understand why someone would give Wardley the benefit of the doubt to keep going out round after round, even though after round 4, you could say arguably he was losing, if not every round, the majority of the rounds. So I think the important thing here, it's good to acknowledge that the fight, yes, was stopped too late. But it's also important to acknowledge, what will Wardley do differently? What will the team do differently? What will be the difference in preparation? My other question as well with regards to that fight, which was a great fight, absolute, amazing, brutal fight, was that my understanding is that you have like a doctor. And so that premise might be incorrect, but you have like a medical professional. And the referee sent Wardley to the medical professional in the fight twice. So my question is, why didn't they stop it? Now, of course, there's a responsibility on the referee, there's a responsibility on the trainers, there's a responsibility with the medical professionals, but I'm intrigued as to see, after they made their analysis, that they thought that Wardley could carry on. So then the final statement then is that Ben comments, sorry, not the final statement, the next statement is that Ben comments shows that he's carrying the weight of the Wardley stoppage. So he thinks about it, and it's something that's on his mind. And this just basically shows that he cares about his boxers, which is a good thing. And I think it's important to recognize that Ben is a good trainer. I know that there's a lot of hatred online, but Ben is a good trainer. He's achieved a lot. And I think the focus here needs to be what amendments are needed with regards to the rematch, if the rematch happens. But it's good that he has that, because the fact that he feels that way that shows a very humane element of him. And he's in, how can I put it? He's in touch with his morality and what it's like to be human. He's in touch with his emotions. And then finally, then confirms that Wardley's approach will change after that fight. And this is so essential because it has to change. There needs to be more jabs. There needs to be different types of jabs. Jabs to the body, jabs to the chest. There needs to be, he feinted a lot in that fight, but he needs to do more effective feinting. And he needs to set better traps. He kept stepping to his right to set up the right hand. That's a good trap. But when that didn't work, we needed to see something else. Maybe a feint with the right, then the left hook, and then come with the feint and then with the right hand. And I think in that fight, what we showed was that Wardley looked one-dimensional. So in the rematch, in the preparation, they really need to improve his ring IQ. Think of this. Ben Davidson comments reveal more than just opinions. They reveal how elite boxing is built on constant evaluation, adaptation, and calculated risk. Every opponent, every camp, and every tactical decision shapes a fighter's future. Moses Itauma's path appears ambitious, but ambition must be supported by experience, preparation, and intelligent matchmaking. Likewise, Wardley's setback shows that even defeat can become valuable if the lessons are applied. In boxing, long-term success belongs to those who evolve faster than the challenges they face. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.